Welcome to the Making Sense of Martech podcast, where we interview leaders and put them in the hot seat. I'm Jacqueline Friedman, founder of Monarch and the global head of advisory for the Martech Weekly. Let's dive in and meet Matt McFee. A little bit about him first. So Matt is a longtime email leader and the force behind Inbox Monster, where he helps marketers stay ahead of deliverability issues with smart, real-time monitoring tools. Before that, he co-founded BriteVerify, the platform that made email verification easy, fast, and essential, eventually leading to its acquisition by Validity, which we'll probably get back to later. With a background in sales, product development, and scaling tech, he's built a career out of solving tough problems for marketers. And so to get us started, welcome to the hot seat, Matt. We're so excited you're here.
Great to be here, Jacqueline. Thanks for having me. It's great to see you.
So good to see you too. So to start us off, we're going to begin with a few quick questions to warm things up, just like any good IP warm-up. So complete this sentence. Martech would be so much better if...
Boy, this is less about the technology side and more about just the operation side. I think Martech would be so much better if companies would spend more time on customer discovery and less time overselling their products.
Oh, hard agree. If only everyone actually listened to their customers or potential customers.
That's right.
All right. What's one marketing buzzword you would love to ban forever?
Right now, it would be AI powered.
Ooh, yeah. I feel like every conversation, it's too much. It's too much.
15 years ago, it was big data. Today, it's AI powered.
You're correct. And I would say even before, in between that, there was personalization too, and it just keeps going.
That's it. You're right.
All right. So what's one Martech hill you'd be willing to die on?
Let's say customer success is the most important KPI.
Understood. I agree. And also true CSAT scores, not paid for ones as well. All right. And last but not least, what are you most curious about right now?
Right now, so from my seat, I'm spending a lot of time trying to understand the governance, compliance, and privacy implications around AI. I know AI powered is one of the catchphrases or buzzwords I would love to see eliminated, but the tools themselves, whether they be machine learning or artificial intelligence enabled tools, can really deliver some exciting things for our respective worlds. So I'm spending a lot of my time just trying to understand the data and privacy and security implications of the models that we're looking at. Hopefully, our current information security program is going to be very consistent or remains consistent throughout the kind of implementation of some of these agents and models that power them. And therefore, we kind of don't have to really move the needle very much with respect to the information security side. A lot of enterprises are resistant right now to these tools. And I think that's because there's so many unknowns and things are changing so quickly. So that's what I'm really spending a lot of time on right now, is just understanding how and whether things will change as we evolve our tooling to include more of these intelligence-based or machine learning-based solutions.
That's a great thing to be curious about. I'm curious about it too, because one, privacy regulations in particular take a long time, and we haven't even started with AI.
We have not.
So there's a lot to come, and hopefully some good protections and guardrails for a lot of particular things. Otherwise, we're going to live in a Terminator world, and I'm not ready for it.
Or a world where adoption just remains low because no one's comfortable moving forward.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. That's also a huge downside, especially on such an impactful opportunity in the marketplace and in the world. All right, let's dive in. Let's get a little personal. What's been the biggest influence on you, your career, you name it?
Early in my time in email, before we even started building BriteVerify, there was an industry mentor of mine. His name was Bill Nussey. He was the CEO of Silverpop, which was an ESP that was sold to IBM. I forgot the date, but anyone who's been in the industry as long as I have will remember the name Silverpop. Bill was just great with his time. He was a mentor of mine. He was a technologist. He was an early internet entrepreneur and ran IXL, which was kind of an early internet business, global kind of business. But he was just really well experienced, great human being, really enjoyed spending time with him. And he was willing to take a call, make an introduction, help me in any way that really I asked, connect me with partners, connect me with folks within Silverpop, connect me with customers if he felt our offering was relevant to the customer's needs. So just, one of those human beings that you kind of meet early in your career where you really start to kind of emulate your behaviors and think through how you want to take what you've learned from that person and then put it into practice later in life. And so I've tried to do that to best of my ability. Yeah, but Bill was a big influence early on.
That's amazing and such an incredible mentor, particularly in the niche-ness that is email.
Mhm.
That's wonderful. And so kind of speaking on that, you've been in the space for at least 25 years, starting with Yahoo. One, I want to definitely hear that story and how you first found your way there. But I would also love to hear what you think of email after all of these years. I've heard it's going to die, it's dead, it's no longer. I just love your perspective on all the above.
Yeah. Thank you for asking. Yeah, so I joined the internet officially in March of 2000. When I left business school, I went to work for a Wall Street bank and didn't love it as much as I thought I would coming out. And a friend of mine that worked at the bank as well left for actually a company called 24/7 Real Media, which was one of the first internet media companies. It was 24/7 and DoubleClick that really competed for media, publisher rights, and email. And email was a growing business at 24/7. And so my friend from the bank went over there, and they were a fast growing company. They were investing a lot in the growth of their email business. And there was a role for me if I wanted it. It seemed really, really cool. Thinking back to some of the things that mattered at the time, this is hard to imagine sitting in our respective seats today. But back then, when you worked for the banks, you dressed up every single day, suits, ties, and the internet was bringing a whole new kind of definition to business dress. It was completely relaxed and casual, as was the culture. And so it just seemed really interesting. And so I'd like to say that I had great intention when I joined the email space and felt like it was going to be a career. But for me, it was more like it just looked like a really cool opportunity to pursue at the time.
I love that. And how did you stumble upon Yahoo at the time too?
Yeah, so it was an opportunity that came about because I was making a personal change in life. My wife and I were up in New York when I was working for 24/7 Real Media, and we were making a move, just relocating down to Charlotte, North Carolina. And the opportunity kind of came through a conversation with my old boss at 24/7, who had then taken a role at Yahoo, was building an email team over there. And so that conversation started right around the time my wife and I made the decision to relocate. And that conversation led to building a business model around it and him getting it funded internally, and then me joining a part of his team as the email team over at Yahoo.
Amazing. And so clearly email is something you're passionate about. What was the light bulb moment from Yahoo or in between that led you to build out BriteVerify and then ultimately Inbox Monster?
Yeah, great question. So when we started, my partners at BriteVerify, we actually had a lead generation agency back in 2006, and it was a services-based industry. So it was, a lot of media budget being allocated to our publisher partners and building data sets for our customers. The financial crisis started to hit and became very, very apparent that there was going to be a lot of volatility around media spend. And so we decided to pivot at that moment and build product, move from a services business to a product business. And the light bulb moment for us was when we got to the point where we built what would ultimately become BriteVerify on top of AWS. Cloud infrastructure, cloud services were relatively new at the time, but we were able to leverage those and had some very curious engineers that wanted to try these new tools. And they allowed us to scale and get to market with a product much more quickly and cost effectively than we would have been able to just a few years earlier. So I think the light bulb moment after spending about a year building out the platform was when we won our first material deal. And the reason was the BriteVerify platform performed faster and was more accurate than the alternatives that existed at the time. And so that was when we realized, hey, we really might have something here. And that was when we just kind of pivoted and went full in on the BriteVerify business.
Amazing.
Yeah. And then Inbox Monster, there wasn't necessarily a light bulb moment. As you mentioned during the introduction, with the exit of BriteVerify, there was just some time there kind of watching the market and figuring out what might be next. And in 2020, when the current founding team at Inbox Monster saw the consolidation taking place in the deliverability services world, we just felt like there was going to be an opportunity to deliver an innovative, cost-effective, customer-forward platform. And that we released our platform in June of 2021. And thankfully, knock on wood, our thesis has been right so far. So it wasn't necessarily a moment, but it was certainly because of some things we were seeing in market that we felt like there was a really good opportunity to build something special.
Oh, for sure. There definitely was a huge gap at that time. And I mean, I think you guys are starting to fill it, and there's still a gap, and there's still so much opportunity left as a result to still continue forward with. And so now I want to get a little bit nerdier. We've kind of learned a bit about you and your background and where you're at. I'd love to hear what the current tech stack is at Inbox Monster, as well as your favorite and maybe least favorite tool, or what the biggest opportunity is.
Yeah, I'll keep the least favorite ones out because I don't know them enough to have a least favorite. But so we use a combination of tools for kind of customer communications. We don't do a ton of outbound marketing, but we have our kind of automated lifecycle onboarding journey set up in ActiveCampaign. We use Intercom for customer communications and Salesforce, as you can imagine, a company like our Salesforce for CRM, Unbounce to host our landing pages and our sign up forms. And so one of the tools that we will actually, that has the greatest upside for us is the ActiveCampaign tool, because we're leveraging ActiveCampaign and just starting to build out these kind of triggered lifecycle journeys around customers that are getting onboarded within the platform. And I think there's just so much upside that we'll be able to generate through more and more use of these journeys beyond just onboarding into kind of the true life cycle nature of our customer. And so we haven't even scratched the surface on that yet, but I'm really excited to kind of lean a little bit more into that tool. And then we've got a bunch of smaller tools that kind of manage or deliver value for different silos within the organization, whether it be our sales team or our marketing team or our tech team. But those are some of the big ones when you kind of think about the traditional Martech definition.
Yeah, for sure. That's exciting to hear. It also just means there's so much opportunity on that lifecycle component. And I imagine your team is very consent forward and consent based with the way you go about marketing, which is the only real way,
Absolutely.
in my personal opinion.
Absolutely agree.
It seems to be a hot take according to LinkedIn, but it's what I believe. I'm glad we're in agreement.
Yes.
So in terms of all of the different capabilities, features, and functionality Inbox Monster brings to the table, what is the larger project overall that you're most proud of rolling out?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think some of the things that we're most proud of, or I'm personally most proud of, are the tools that we deliver that add immediate value to our customers' lives, right? There are many kind of tactical things that we build into the platform based on requests from customers that give them an additional insight, an additional function that they can execute on and be a little bit more efficient at their job. One of the things that comes to mind right now comes out of our creative rendering platform, which are previews designed to capture the AI preview or annotations from Gmail or the results of the schema set up with Yahoo. So our customers can understand in real time before they ever move to production approval for their content, exactly how those three views are going to capture and present those short kind of synopses of the email content itself. Each of those mail systems, and with Apple, it's the email app on the phones, they deliver in a different way, right? So there are ways to properly design content and the structure of your content to make sure Gmail and Yahoo present the elements you care most about. Apple makes it much more difficult, right? So the ability to display what those views are going to look like to a consumer once they receive your emails with these AI preview tools, that's one thing that I'm really, really proud about, mostly because it was complicated to accomplish. So from an engineering perspective, it was a great achievement, but customers are demanding it. They need to see exactly how a great majority of their viewers are going to see their content. And then additional questions come in like attribution, if the preview's pulling in a discount code or something to that effect, where a user can just go right to the site and enter the discount code, you kind of lose attribution from the email, which was originally maybe a click that got the consumer to the landing page where the code could be used. So there's still a lot unknown in there, but that's just a part of you ask about the things that I'm proud of. That's one of them more recent, mostly because everybody is trying to create that transparency in their programming, and now they can, which is great.
That's amazing. Yeah, attribution in and of itself is its own beast of a topic. So that's amazing in terms of what you guys are bringing to the forefront, and also even just acknowledging and recognizing and touting that you're listening to what your customers are demanding. I think there's so many companies out there that it kind of goes into a void. You give the feedback, you submit the survey, nothing ever really happens. And that's not true everywhere, of course, but I'm grateful that that's an accomplishment and achievement you're proud of in particular, too. It also shows a true character of kind of what culture you're bringing to the table.
Thank you for saying that.
Brought to you by our sponsors. If there's one theme that's followed me at every stop in my Martech career, it's trying to get good data into the hands of marketers. That's why I'm so excited to tell you about our sponsor, HighTouch, the leading composable CDP and AI decisioning platform. Companies like Domino's, Chime, Aritzia, and PetSmart trust HighTouch to power their data. And here's the kicker. 90% of customers have a real use case live in production within their first week. That means you can implement a world-class CDP in months rather than the usual years-long headache. That's why top brands choose HighTouch to personalize every customer interaction at scale. See what HighTouch can do for you at hightouch.com/MSOM. And now back to the hot seat.
So kind of shifting gears slightly in terms of products specifically, but more about what is something that people in marketing teams, engineering teams, IT teams, you name it, should be paying more attention to, because it's not just, I want my email to arrive into the inbox. There's so much more that goes into deliverability. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, there's so much change that's taking place at the mail system level. Over time, you've seen a slow consolidation of mail systems. I think the most recent one that's of note was Cox rolling up their mail services to the Yahoo platform. But there have been many that have preceded that in the preceding years. There's also, when you look internationally, Google is taking so much market share with Gmail that you'll see some of the small regional players in other countries just shutting down or rolling up to consolidate to remain competitive. So I think in a longer term, we'll probably see that continue on, but that change doesn't take place as quickly as some of the other changes that we've seen at the mail system level. So last year, with the announcement of tighter controls from Gmail and Yahoo around complaint rates and demarc records and unsubscribe, and then Outlook coming out with their confirmation for bulk senders that went into effect recently around kind of what's going to happen if you're not, full alignment on your records. And so I think those changes, while they were messaged far in advance, we saw a lot of last minute panic from customers who hadn't quite brought their programs up to where they needed to be when the kind of February of 2024 hit, and then monitoring was going to start to kind of kick in. But thankfully, they had a grace period there, because I don't think really the controls really went into effect in a noticeable basis until later in the mid-year. So I think we'll probably continue to see those sorts of things where the big mail systems are tightening down the controls to ensure that their consumers are only receiving emails they care to see, and that it's really easy to say, I don't want to see this anymore. And then it's likely even going to be easier if a consumer just wants to complain about an email, which makes that complaint rate management so important. I think we'll just continue to see innovation too. Like I mentioned, the AI previews earlier. I suspect we will see continued evolution on a faster pace with innovation and new tools kind of brought in to create a better experience for email subscribers. Because ultimately it's going to be a race, right? Gmail owns it right now, but Yahoo's doing a great job with rolling out some new tools. And I would suspect they're all going to continue to compete to make sure the inbox remains a place that's preserved for messaging people want to read. So I think those are going to be some really, really important things. The experts in this space, some of which work for Inbox Monster, some of which work for ESPs and other competitors, they know all the knowledge. They understand the strategy. So my guidance would be just pay attention to the experts, listen to their guidance around best practices, around kind of how to close the gap between your current practices and moving to best practices. It's not always an easy business decision. Sometimes there are extenuating circumstances in an org where a manager says no to moving to better practices. But ultimately, I think the experts are going to be the ones to continue to guide organizations. So listen to the experts.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I, for one, am very excited about the latest Microsoft update and just all of the different providers finally kind of paying attention and listening. And as much as there's change in, for example, Apple Mail's approach to presenting your inbox, Gmail did that over 10 years ago. It's all evolving for customer first and privacy first, which is what we as consumers deserve. And so I definitely understand the hesitation from some folks and maybe the last minute panic, but ultimately it's kind of the step in the right direction to hopefully make email more meaningful, as well as every other aspect of marketing too.
Amen.
One day we'll hopefully have the most meaningful marketing experiences in the world. All right, we've got a question from someone in the field. You were mentioning there's some deliverability experts, and I tapped Allison Goody, a deliverability advocacy specialist at Cinch Mailgun, previously at Braze for about 6 years. So she knows her stuff and at scale. And her question is, what are the most effective ways you found to quantify the value of deliverability for stakeholders? And how can we actually future-proof our industry? I know I've dealt with this question a bunch. I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, great question, Allison, and congratulations on the recent move. So when we have this conversation with prospects, we ideally like the business stakeholder involved in the conversation. This is going to be the person who is responsible for revenues through the email stream, and likely one of the many things that person is responsible for. It's not very often that a sender will share their revenue metrics or their revenue per subscriber metrics with us. And so what we do is we'll create a little bit of a calculator experience, right, where we can help measure one of two things: either the cost of not being in the inbox, which in a lot of instances, we'll speak with companies that know they have existing issues. And they know they have existing issues because they're moving from one platform to Inbox Monster, or they don't have a platform working on their behalf, but they've seen a reduction in performance and revenues over time. So they need to get some visibility that they don't have at the moment. And so we'll help them understand the cost of not being in the inbox because there's already that existing delta. And once a customer solves that challenge and has brought deliverability and inbox placement up to kind of maximum rate for their business, then the conversation is less about evaluating the cost of not being in the inbox and evaluating the value of staying there. And so they are kind of two sides of the same coin when you really think about how the math works. But at the end of the day, if you have a high 90s%, 95, 98% inbox placement rate for a large organization, those organizations still invest in deliverability monitoring because they become insurance programs around any sort of the leading indicators that would ultimately have a long-term effect on revenues. And so the ability in real time to be alerted if there's a trend that has reversed that could have some short-term or medium-term effect on email revenues, those are the types of things that these systems are great at identifying and alerting on. And so the value of staying in the inbox is the conversation we have with senders who already are hitting very, very high inbox rates and max revenues, but they know that it's a small investment to maintain that piece, right? Insurance, and reduce the risk that any changes are going to have a bad effect. And so that's kind of how we calculate that out. Bulletproofing or future-proofing the industry. Again, I think there's so many changes that are yet to be experienced at the mail system level. And having systems like ours and teams like ours that are just responsible for understanding where this industry is going, communicating with the mail systems and the mailbox providers themselves, attending industry shows, having a forward view on how our whole industry is moving, and then building tools to support that and insights. And a great example is the evolution of tabs, right? Tabs with Gmail and Outlook have been around for quite a while. Everyone has become accustomed to those. But now with iCloud and Yahoo releasing their tabs, we have two new data points that are now available for marketers to understand and pay attention to. So I think as long as we can stay ahead of the curve and stay ahead of what's coming to give marketers tools that just continue to monitor every data point that's available to them, I think we'll continue to do a good job. Now, future-proofing it, hard to say. I mean, you asked this question earlier, been in email for a long, long time, 25 years now, and heard probably 5 times that email is going to die. But I've raised kids that didn't have email. All they had was social media, and now they communicate with their bosses and with some friends and with their school as an alumni of their college school that they communicate over email. So I think it's a generational thing. People tend to pick it up a little bit as they get through college and into the professional career. It's our job to stay ahead of the game, to make sure that people sending to my daughters remain relevant and are able to remain in the inbox.
That's a great way to frame and phrase all of the above. I think there is both a huge opportunity also, not just for the email providers themselves in terms of ESPs, but also the actual source companies as well as the deliverability services to provide that education. I think so few actually understand how deliverability can impact your actual sending domain and as a result your revenue, and that lack of business outcome and kind of connecting the dots is so important.
It is.
The situation, once you're in it, you never want to be in it again.
When we speak at shows, we talk a lot about that example right there. It's the 30 to 60 to 90 day dig out from whatever challenges you're facing versus the 2 or 3 days where you catch the trend and you solve for it before it affects revenues. And that's the job, right? That's the job we all signed up for.
Yep, for sure. And while we talk about maybe future-proofing is not the easiest possible opportunity, I do see a lot of innovation, not just AI related, but there's been a lot of innovating and we'll just say rearranging of some of the same building blocks I'd love to hear your opinions at the industry at large, because you've been through the rearranging before yourself. And so I'd love your perspective.
Yep. It's interesting, right? This is probably the third go around in the industry that I operate in where we've seen a roll up of organizations that created supply side opportunities for new organizations. And I think the most obvious ones to me are the original roll up of the Exact Targets of the world and the Silver Pops of the world, the Pardots and Eloquat, all those mail systems getting acquired up to larger organizations that then created a lot of space for new organizations to roll up with a better offering built on top of an MTA with better reporting, better functionality. So I don't think all of Martech necessarily is just kind of rebuild with the same blocks. I think there has been innovation that has taken place. I do think that the companies that have the best strategy and willingness to invest in that strategy around the intelligence that we all have access to these days, and really take a customer first approach on how using that intelligence can deliver better value for the customer, I think those are going to be the ones that really kind of stand out and deliver just some better tools for the market, right? But it's hard. I mean, there's a lot of customers on platforms, and I won't name names, but they're on platforms right now that they don't love, but getting off of the platform is hard.
Why don't we name names, huh? It is the hot seat after all.
That's a very, very good point. But there has to be evolution at the enterprise level. In the same way, some of these kind of mid to kind of lower to mid enterprise competitors are going to deliver this year. And I think about it, again, mostly through the lens of the email service provider world, because that's where we interface most often. But I have to believe it's also consistent in other parts of the Martech stack, helping procurement teams consolidate, delivering better value at a lower cost to the actual marketing teams or the CRM owners. These are just common themes that will always resonate and always make sense. And I think with some of the tools that we're all working through right now, I think that we'll see innovation come more quickly. But I know, Jacqueline, you've been in the same room that I have recently and just kind of listened to the forward-looking view around product evolution. And it's a beautiful view. The question is, can it be delivered? And that's going to be the key.
Yeah. The big question is, who is going to be agile and execute what they actually promise?
Amen.
And it's a big question mark.
Yes, indeed.
I'm hopeful for a number of places and every company out there, but it's going to be truly those who listen to their customers and what they want. And I feel like that just keeps being a common theme, just customer forward, customer first throughout. And so speaking of customers, what is something you foresee or would like to see for vendors? And it could be deliverability or just email in general in the Martech space to better help marketers, both the technical and the non-technical, because you speak to likely a lifecycle or demand gen marketer much differently than to a marketing operations or marketing systems architect.
We talk quite a bit about the customer's moment of value. What we often see, and we fell victim to it early in our business as well, is vendors tend to have a moment of value that's tied to the contract signature date, right? So that is a moment of victory for vendors, whereas the customer's moment of value often doesn't come for a month or 2 or 3 after the contract is signed. So I would just love to see more vendors invest in getting the customer to the moment of value as much as they invest in getting the vendor to the moment of value, right? We tend to over-invest in the sales and marketing process, but when it comes to delivering on what the customer has acquired from us, a lot of vendors then underwhelm. And we flip that on its head, and we often say that the worst process you're going to experience at Inbox Monster is the sales process, because everything from that point forward is outstanding. And so I think that's something that I'd love to see an evolution towards, an investment in getting the customer to their moment of value from all vendors. That I think leads to success across the board.
I agree. I've noticed it's a small, but I think it's a growing shift towards outcome-based, both contracts, but also approaches. And as a result, one, your customers are going to be happier, your retention rates are going to be better, and also you don't have to acquire as aggressively and do non-consent based email as a result.
That's the truth.
It really is. It really is. No, that's super helpful to hear that perspective too, because I think a lot of times there's internal champions that are having to do those business outcomes on their own. And to your point, I think having sales be your partner in helping identify how you're going to measure that and really kind of set benchmarks so that everyone's expectations are understood, both at the point of signing the contract, but also the next 6 months. And you've mentioned before, just an email migration in of itself, it can take anywhere from a month to 3 years, depending on the complexity. It's definitely deflating if you're in year 2 and you're like, we still haven't achieved any ROI or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And so working together and making sure that outcome is identified, I think is a very valid and should be the way every company is doing it.
Absolutely. Our head of CS, Brad, over here, has for the last few years really driven home the value of those early discovery notes, the pre-contract discovery notes, because that's when the customer is going to be most truthful about, this is where we're having problems. Here's the solution we're looking for. We get into procurement discussion and that sort of thing. We don't really get great discovery questions about what matters to the customer, but those notes are so important to properly transitioning a customer who's like, yep, let's go, contract is signed, to the success team. And if the success team isn't as informed about what matters most to the customer as the salesperson was, there's a loss of value immediately. And I'm sure Brad would be laughing when he hears this, because I've typically been not very good at discovery notes. So I'll throw that in.
You know what? That is, well, this is a Martech podcast. I see sales and marketing really just the yin and the yang. And to that point, if your salesperson does the full discovery, that means everything else you do will be more informed, be able to segment better, all of the above. And that's not just from a customer success or experience standpoint. It is truly the entire life cycle of whatever your customer is. So I guess I'm going to agree with Brad. Work on your disco a little bit.
Disco. All about the disco.
It's an important dance to do in the beginning and
indeed.
honestly throughout the whole process. Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Matt. We got one more question for you. Who is someone we should have on the podcast?
If you haven't spoken to Jeremy yet, reach out to Jeremy Seltzer. He's the CRO at Movable Ink. He posts a lot on LinkedIn just about the Martech world in general. He's got a really interesting view, speaks to the CMO level quite a bit at the Fortune 500 level. And so I think he's got a great perspective, not only the current state of the Martech stack, but also probably a good future view on where things are headed. So he's someone I suggest you reach out to.
Okay, I will ask you for that introduction.
Happy to do that.
Because love Movable Ink and all the work they've been doing for years and years. So looking forward to that.
Awesome.
Well, thank you again, Matt. Where can folks find you?
Yeah, so inboxmonster.com. Naturally, I'm on LinkedIn. That's where I spend all my social media time. So LinkedIn will be the one spot, and certainly inboxmonster.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Matt. It's good to see you. I'll see you soon, actually.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.